This is Tech Tuesday, where we shine the spotlight on a trending theme in the world of technology and gain a better understanding of where trends are leading in the world of tech investment. This is Tech Tuesday, presented by the Canadian Securities Exchange. Thank you to everyone online for joining us live today for this week's edition of Tech Tuesday. Today's session, Ortho Tech, presented by the Canadian Securities Exchange, the world's fastest growing stock exchange and the exchange for entrepreneurs. This is sponsored by US Angels and John Ritchie. We are pleased to have three companies: Frank Luppino, CEO, Remedium Bio; Yvonne Bokelman, CEO, Alyve Medical; and Adam Greenspan, co-founder and president of Trace Ortho. Mark Francis will be this week's moderator, and I'm your host, Barrington Miller. Our objective in running Tech Tuesday is twofold. First is for companies to gain visibility and traction on an accessible platform. The second is for capital markets and participants to find out and learn about the types of companies that are involved in the Ortho Tech space. Now, for you, the attendees, we do ask that you share your ideas, leads, possible funding sources with the presenters. You may even have strategic potential relationships for them. You can contact them with their information in the profile box below. With respect, we don't give management advice unless we're truly experts in the company's fields. And for some housekeeping matters, if images aren't clear, please refresh your screen or call your IT department, check your bandwidth. This is also available on different platforms like YouTube and LinkedIn. This presentation is for information purposes only. This is not an invitation to buy or sell shares, and we make no representation about any of these companies. And of course, Mark Francis will be our moderator in the Q&A stage. First up, we have Frank Luppino. Frank is the CEO of Remedium Bio, a gene therapy company developing a novel treatments for serious diseases. An engineer by training, having obtained his chemical engineering degree from Lehigh University, Frank has successfully developed a number of therapeutics in his career, including several of the leading osteoarthritis treatments currently on the market. He founded Remedium on the promise of technology that may become the first single injection therapeutic potentially capable of halting progression of this debilitating disease. Over to you.
Thank you for the introduction, Barrington. I'm Frank Luppino. I'm the CEO of Remedium Bio. Remedium is a gene therapy company developing treatments for serious diseases, and we use a particular approach where we combine proven technologies in novel and proprietary ways in order to streamline the development process. And we've done this with our lead product, a first-in-class, potentially disease-modifying osteoarthritis, allow us to address the largest unmet need in rheumatology. Osteoarthritis is a significant burden, not only to the 1 in 7 adults who suffer from the disease, but to the entire healthcare system. And sadly, there are no currently approved treatments that work, that actually alter the structural progression and cartilage loss characteristic of this disease. There are treatments that are available, but they're all palliative. They mask symptoms of OA for short periods of time. The only way to even slow the rate of cartilage loss in OA is to remove your joint and replace it with an artificial one. And we think we can do better. Now, the lack of successful therapeutics is not for lack of trying. This is a very large potential market, and consequently, a number of approaches have been tried. But they've all failed to show clinical disease-modifying effect except for one. Repeatedly injecting a protein, the FGF18 protein, into arthritic joints has been shown in clinical study to increase cartilage thickness in OA patients. Now, unfortunately, this treatment modality is limited by the same challenges that all potential OA therapeutics face, and that's delivery. Cartilage is avascular, and without blood flow, systemically delivered therapeutics won't work. And therapeutics delivered locally directly into the joint are cleared fairly rapidly, limiting their effect. And these limitations, as well as the significant potential of FGF18 in treating osteoarthritis, are evident when this treatment is studied in the clinic. These data show what happens when you repeatedly inject the FGF18 protein into the knees of osteoarthritis patients. As you can see on the left, if you increase the dose and the frequency of injection sufficiently, you can get to the point where you start to see statistically significant increases in cartilage thickness in these OA patients. But as we see on the right, if you stop these continual injections, you can lose these gains. And in order to achieve the best results on the left for bilateral OA, you'd need 12 injections per year and to continue that regimen indefinitely. Now, this is where Remedium comes in. We overcome these limitations using gene therapy. We reprogram the cells of the joint so they express higher levels of this endogenous protein to create an environment that's conducive to cartilage health. Now, you may have heard of the potential curative powers of gene therapy for a number of rare diseases. Well, in several ways, osteoarthritis is a perfect clinical indication to target with gene therapy. First, our treatment is a single intra-articular injection, so it's a local treatment for a local disease. And the single injection results in durable expression of the FGF18 protein within the joint. And our injection is highly localized within the joint with little to no systemic exposure after the injection. And this property has profoundly significant positive implications in a number of areas. Certainly, it makes for a safe treatment, but it also allows us to use fairly low doses compared to other systemically delivered gene therapies, and it helps to simplify manufacturing and will result in a very cost-competitive product. Ours is not one of these headline-grabbing million-dollar gene therapies that you may have read about. And the final advantage of our approach is that we believe we have an opportunity to tailor our dosing to maximize biologic effect. And that is unlike with repeat injections of the protein, where you're going to be limited by how often a physician will be able to perform intra-articular injections on patients. So I've already shown that osteoarthritis has proven to be a tough nut to crack. So why do we think our approach will work? The simple answer is ours is truly a cartilage regenerative solution. Now, this is a busy and complicated slide, but what it shows is that other approaches typically focus on processes like inflammation or cellular senescence that happen to occur concurrently with OA in the hopes that if you interrupt these processes, you will at least slow progression of the disease, but that hasn't worked. If you want to not only slow progression of osteoarthritis, but potentially reverse it, FGF18 is the only therapeutic that's shown the ability to increase cartilage thickness in human clinical studies. And our OA gene therapy, as this figure shows, is right there knocking on the door as we seek to accelerate our entry into the clinic. Let me show you what I mean. Cartilage consists, as depicted in the center of this slide, consists of cells called chondrocytes and extracellular matrix or cartilage. So in order to regenerate cartilage, you either need to increase the number of chondrocytes or increase the rate at which they express not just any kind of cartilage, but a specific type of cartilage called hyaline cartilage. We've developed assays to measure both of these potential mechanisms of action, and we've demonstrated that our proprietary gene therapy works by both mechanisms. On the left, we show that at low doses, our gene therapy promotes dose-dependent increases in chondrocytes. And on the right, at similarly low doses, we see statistically significant increases in gene expression of hyaline cartilage constituents and downregulation of unwanted fibrocartilage expression. Essentially, at a molecular level, our treatment turns on all the right stuff and turns off all the right stuff. And this mechanistic work translates very well when we test our product in vivo. At all doses we've tested so far in our animal studies, we see a very safe and well-tolerated treatment. And we see that our gene therapy is able to get to the cartilage cells within the matrix and increase their expression of FGF18. Using a bioluminescent reporter on the left, we see a durable, localized expression within the joint after treatment. And all this translates to increases in cartilage thickness. All right, these are very exciting results coming recently from our ongoing research collaboration with Tufts University here in Boston. Now, Remedium has assembled a team that can make this promising technology a reality. We know osteoarthritis, having developed several leading OA products on the market today. We've successfully developed biologics and gene therapies, and we have experience growing small companies into larger companies. So in summary, we have an OA solution that is based on the only clinically validated technology shown to increase cartilage thickness in clinical studies. And our approach for delivering this protein via gene therapy offers potentially significant advantages over the alternatives. And the next step for Remedium is to rapidly advance this exciting technology into the clinic and to bring this regenerative approach in osteoarthritis to the millions who suffer from this debilitating disease. Thank you for your time.
Frank, thank you very much. And Barrington and I joke that this session, this Tech Tuesday session is for him and for me because, shoulders, knees, and so on. Tell us a little bit about the aha moment. How did that aha moment occur, and what did you do immediately after that?
I'm right behind you with the need for this product. I've been in this industry for several decades. I don't like to admit it. There were two things that came together to form the aha moment. Over the last decade or so, we've seen significant advances in gene therapies that were very evident to those of us in the industry, but maybe only became evident to the general public with the pandemic and with development of vaccines, but significant advances. Concurrent with that, companies have been trying to develop disease-modifying therapeutics for OA for a long time, and nothing has worked. The real aha moment came when I first saw the results of the clinical study that was evaluating the repeat FGF18 protein injections. To see dose-dependent increases in cartilage in a clinical setting was truly striking. It hadn't been seen before. And so after seeing those results, combining the two technologies just made total sense. And the first step was to take out IP and start putting the company together.
So in putting the company together, in what order did you build your team?
So we believe in a very lean approach. So we're still a very small team, but I'd worked in this industry, as I mentioned, for a number of years, and specifically developing OA therapeutics for 2 decades. So I knew a lot of folks in this industry. So the first 2 moves that I did was, number one, to bring on board our first advisor, who's a renowned rheumatologist at the Tufts Medical Center in Boston, who's been working in OA for a number of years. And he introduced us to some folks at a laboratory within the university that could test our construct in studies from which the data in our presentation came from. And the second thing that I did was to bring on board my co-founder, Alex, who's our chief operating officer, who's also been in this industry, has extensive experience developing OA products, but also biologics and gene therapies as well. And so it was really a perfect initial team that we put together. And we still try to keep it fairly lean, but that was what we did at first.
Well, and I've invested in a couple of companies where they tried to go big too soon. And of course, then their cash burn ramped up, and that didn't help matters at all. It's always much harder to shrink a team than to build it. So yeah, I think you're on the right track there. Now, shifting a bit to the therapy, and I'm not a scientist. I'm amazed in what I watch and hear from people like you. In this case, would earlier treatment be more efficacious, or is it a situation where you're probably going to wait until it's fairly bad?
Because our approach does work by stimulating your natural cartilage to regenerate. We do believe you need cartilage around for our approach to work. So if you're literally end stage bone on bone and you're weeks from a joint replacement, this would not be the therapy for you. I think the results will be most dramatic for patients whose disease is mild to moderate, and who are progressing fairly rapidly. You will get the most dramatic results there, I believe. But in actuality, given the mechanism of how our approach works, we think early treatment may really prove to be a better. As I mentioned, it's an endogenous molecule. It's naturally expressed in the joint. It does decline with age. And so if you have an early treatment before you develop significant symptoms, you may never get to that more advanced disease state with this treatment. So I think that ultimately would make a lot of sense down the road.
So in other words, this would be intercepting it at a different stage, because now the current practice is to try and, hold it off. And when it gets really bad, we'll do a replacement. And so that would represent significant improvement. You're talking about preventative healthcare, essentially, to a large degree. So you say that the gene therapy doesn't go outside of the joint. On what basis do you make this statement?
Because gene therapy really is almost a perfect technology to target OA, there has been work before Remedium trying to evaluate the best ways to deliver gene therapies intra-articularly or within the joint. So there's been a lot of work in a lot of different models, animal studies and human studies, evaluating the pharmacokinetics and what happens after you inject intra-articularly with the types of vector that we are using to deliver our gene therapy. And they all show the same thing. Very, very high localization within the joint. 99.7% plus has been shown in all of these studies. Remedium is now generating our own data. I showed one of the slides in my presentation where we use a bioluminescent reporter to see where our product goes. And we're confirming what was expected and known from the scientific literature, that this is a very highly localized intervention.
I had always assumed that the loss of cartilage was a function of the things you did. So if you were, I know a lot of geologists whose knees are in a lot of pain as they're older because they've jumped up and down on so many rocks and scrabbled over them and so on. And that if you treated your knees right and your joints right, well, then you're less likely to have problems. And if you pushed it to the limit, you're more likely to. But you're indicating that there is also a genetic predisposition component to this, or suggesting that?
The causes of OA really are multifactorial, and activity alone doesn't necessarily cause this. There's a balance between anabolic and catabolic activity with most tissues, and there is with cartilage as well. And generally what happens is you have some type of injury, or you might have a genetic predisposition that affects the mechanics within the joint. And then over time, as you are active, that slight imbalance causes the wear and tear of the cartilage and causes osteoarthritis. OA is the wear and tear version of arthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis is a different beast, and it's an immune reaction against your own tissue. So OA is wear and tear initiated either by potentially genetic factors that haven't been fully understood yet, or mechanical imbalances caused by injury.
Okay. And so looking forward, what is your next milestone?
We're very excited about the results that are coming out of our collaboration with Tufts, and we see this as a potentially transformative therapy. So our focus now is getting this into the clinic as rapidly as we can, and then trying to get it to as many people as we can in a short amount of time as possible. So currently, being a younger company, we are bringing in the funds that will allow us to invest in the studies, the larger studies you need to get into the clinic. And we're already starting to plan also for the clinical studies that we will embark upon to test this therapy in humans.
And are you going to look internationally to do any of your testing? Other countries where the costs might be lower, India, for instance, or the EU?
We initially intend to start in the US because it will be simpler and easier, and the smaller studies early on lend themselves to doing that. And we have some wonderful institutions even here that we're partnered with one of our advisors that we may look to do some of the early stage studies. But as we get to later stage studies, certainly international studies could be beneficial, both from a cost perspective, but also from an acceptability perspective globally. Because we think, as I mentioned in my presentation, this product will be able to be priced someday to be competitive really globally and provide a truly regenerative option to patients around the globe.
Magnificent. Final question for you. Do you anticipate an educational hurdle in the clinical setting, or will this flow fairly naturally?
Fairly naturally to both physicians and patients, in the sense that this is a simple intra-articular injection, and intra-articular injections are done all the time. So the treatment itself will look and feel exactly like other treatments that, steroid injections, for example, that OA patients have. We think the educational hurdle will come with the mindset that I think most people today believe gene therapy is something that is for deadly diseases, and it's not something that you would take for something like osteoarthritis. But that's changing. This technology, like I say, is really perfectly suited to target OA. And as we've seen with these vaccines that everybody, now you can go to CVS and get them, in the future, people are going to realize that this technology makes perfect sense. And I think it's overcoming that educational hurdle over the next few years, concurrent with our clinical studies, is going to happen naturally.
Very good. Well, Frank, thank you very much. And we look forward to following your success.
Thank you for the questions, and thank you for the invitation.
Yvonne Bokelman joined Alyve Medical on January 1st, 2022 as COO. She was appointed CEO in April of 2022. Prior to joining Alyve Medical, Yvonne was most recently a president and general manager of Zimmer Biomet. She spent more than 10 years at Zimmer Biomet in a number of leadership and executive roles of increasing responsibility, overseeing a variety of functions, and in more recent years, businesses that totaled nearly $300 million in annual revenues. Prior to her time at Zimmer Biomet, she served in leadership roles at Medtronic Spine and Biologics, Quadramed, and healthcare consulting companies, preceded by several years in hospital administration. Without further ado, Yvonne.
Good afternoon. I'm Yvonne Bokelman, CEO of Alyve Medical. As a bit of a background, I want to share a story with you. Our founder, my chief research officer, is based in Italy, and he has a long history working with motorsport and Formula One racing, spending years working with Lamborghini, Ferrari, and Ducati. He took that information, working with sensors and high performance, highly sophisticated equipment, and when he came and pivoted to orthopedics, he brought all of that knowledge, and that knowledge is the foundation of the products that are now Alyve Medical. It's kind of a unique story, so I wanted to share it with you in terms of how you're going to look at our technology. So Alyve has two technologies which solve a few musculoskeletal problems. First and foremost, there is no stimulation or rehab device today that really retrains the brain and achieves long-term outcomes. Current therapies do not provide for dynamic stimulation, biofeedback, or do they generate a neuroplastic response. In orthopedics, the methods for assessing motion patterns and calculating outcomes are inconsistent and subjective. And really importantly, compliance with physical therapy is a well-documented problem. 75% of patients don't comply with what their physical therapy has prescribed. It causes a huge cost to the healthcare system. And with the exponential growth that's in orthopedics, it demands efficient and economic care that can be delivered remotely. Our first technology solution to these problems is a therapeutic, substantially differentiated NMES, or neuromuscular electrical stimulation wearable device. It's called Neuroline System S. It treats about 90% of shoulder pathologies. It is accompanied with a companion tablet, and with that, it provides the trimodal biofeedback that increases that patient compliance. The key, however, is that first bullet point, the motion-activated stimulation. It allows for dynamic interaction and induces that neuroplasticity within the brain. Our second technology is called Show Motion. It is a kinematic sensor kit which objectively documents both normal and abnormal motion in a joint in about 5 to 7 minutes. It's non-invasive, it's mobile, and it provides instant graphic results for the healthcare provider. To visually demonstrate these technologies in action, I have two really quick patient videos on the next slide. The first individual, the gentleman that you're seeing, is a warehouse worker who's had multiple injuries to his shoulder. You can see the difficulty he has in raising his arm and the subluxation in his shoulder. He's going to put on Neuroline. You're having two views of this. And when he puts on the Neuroline for the very first time, you see that he can instantly lift his arm and not have that very painful subluxation. We know this benefit stuck for him after his treatment and have continued to hear from him about how we changed his life. In the next video, you'll see the female, and just really quickly, you're seeing the Show Motion graph with her, and you'll see that the turquoise and pink lines are outside that dark green band. That's the band of abnormality. You can also see she has a much more subtle subluxation with her shoulder, but when she puts on the Neuroline, again, the graph changes and you can see that she is within those bands of normality. So again, had a sustained improvement for her as well. The efficacy and functional NMES is well known, but what we've done at Alyve is we've taken that with Neuroline S, is we've taken that to the next level. First, it's the patented motion-activated stimulation, which I'll say, number one, defines an algorithm that modulates the intensity of the stimulation. And secondly, it is dynamically controlled by the technology during the patient's movement. So think about it being really personalized to each individual patient. It causes a neuroplastic effect, retrains and re-educates the muscles for each person that it's used on. With Show Motion, we've gone beyond the typical motion tracking with the ability to record and identify motion patterns, which then healthcare providers can correlate to pathologies and prescribe the needed treatment. On the next slide, we know this works. We've been hearing it from physicians, from patients, and from physical therapists, but let me highlight one quick data point that just is, as some of our healthcare professionals say, a drop the mic moment here. We did a randomized controlled trial that was completely independent of Alyve. And on the top line, you can see patients went to physical therapy and had our Neuroline S as an adjunct to that. And on the top line, at that first red arrow, is their 6-week stops. And you can see the patients continue to improve. The line grows up and then goes across for 12 months with that sustained improvement. For the patients that just had PT without Neuroline in the bright orange, you can see after the first arrow, you actually deteriorate when your PT stops. There wasn't that retraining and re-education of the brain. And so you start to decline, and then that's sustained across. So really strong evidence as to the fact of how impactful Neuroline S is used with physical therapy and rehab. We have other metrics and other publications available on all of our products. Happy to share that with anyone who's interested. On the next slide, just a quick view of the company as a whole. You can see we've been around since about 2016, getting these products market ready, both Show Motion and Neuroline. You see that in the orange boxes. In the yellow box from 2018 to 2021, we had our regulatory approvals both in Europe and the US and began the launching of both products in those markets. What you see out in 23 and 24 is our development pipeline, where we move from not only the shoulder, but into the knee and the spine, which is what surgeons are requesting for us in terms of market growth. There's some metrics, and we're in 200 clinics across the globe with Neuroline S. We've treated over 2,500 patients, over 25,000 of them in Show Motion. And up at the top, you can see just some of the US customers that we have already using our products. And if you're familiar, these are our very premier institutions across the market. Important to me, at the very bottom of the slide in turquoise, is the fundraising efforts that we've been doing. We closed a Seed 1 Friends and Family back in May. We currently have an open Seed 2. We'll launch a Series A at the first part of 2023. And we anticipate, because of the innovations that we've created and the market we've created, we can see an exit for ourselves in the next couple of years. Last, I'm really fortunate to be working and collaborating with a great team. They've got expertise across the spectrum that really will allow us to successfully execute on our vision, which is to change that paradigm of musculoskeletal rehab and the standard of care around muscle and joint function. Thank you. My contact information is there, and I'll look forward to hearing from you.
Adam Greenspan. Adam is a biomedical entrepreneur with over 15 years experience in scientific R&D, patent law, innovation program management, and new venture development. In 2019, Adam co-founded Trace Orthopedics, based on an invention for a new device and procedure to repair partially torn tendons. They are pioneering a shift from debilitating open surgeries to minimally invasive needle-based procedures for a variety of repairs, such as rotator cuff and Achilles tendon. His educational background includes biomedical engineering and material science, and he is registered as a patent agent with USPTO. Previously, he licensed technologies from Hopkins and Jefferson, and he ran investment programs at the University City Science Center in Philadelphia. Go Eagles.
Thank you. I'm Adam Greenspan, President and CEO of Trace Orthopedics. Our patented tendon fastener device is the first option to reattach painful partial tears without a trip to the operating room. The future of tendon repair. And unless you've had one of these, you may not realize that most of these cases, despite pain level, aren't even considered for surgery. Trace tendon fastener is a game changer. It is an implant. You can see one of our prototypes here on the left. It's a suture anchor and a wire coil specially designed for insertion into the detachment site using a 10-gauge needle-based procedure, which is ultrasound guided without full anesthesia. There's a major gap in the treatment of partial tendon tears. They are ubiquitous. Standard of care is non-operative because of the associated cost, risk, and recovery. These cases are typically not referred for surgery. The problem is that the pain relief, hopefully attained, is only temporary in many cases. Here's the landscape for tendon repair. Frontline treatment today is conservative, including injections, needling, or an ablation technique called tenotomy. It's a growing market despite no evidence of actually achieving the repair. On the other side is open or arthroscopic surgery, which is a mature and crowded market, but there's nothing in between that bridges these treatment approaches. Trace is uniquely positioned here with a repair product that is minimally invasive with no OR time. And this is what got me excited in the first place. We are right at the forefront of a paradigm shift for tendon repair. By bringing it out of the OR, we are cutting the total healthcare costs in half compared with surgical cases. And that is how We are expanding the patient population that is treatable. It's a huge market. There's over 31 million cases reported each year in the US alone. We have a readily serviceable market niche classified by cases of partial tear with clean edges, i.e. no shredding of the tendon and no retraction. This accounts for approximately 10% of all partial tear cases, with hip, shoulder, and ankle most prevalent, representing a $2.4 billion SAM. We've proven the concept using human hip cadavers. My co-founder, Dr. Bill Morrison, imaged this case, and we saw that there was a partial tear shown by the red arrows marked on the left, and then he placed a trace fastener. The fixation is shown on the right, with the tendon effectively funneled into the bone. In clinical patients, this will help prevent progression to full tear and muscle atrophy. Our IP protection is robust. We have patents issued and pending worldwide on the fastener and method. We've also optioned a patented bioabsorbable metal alloy from the University of Florida, and initial testing is underway. The trace tendon fastener is a 510K-able Class 2 medical device with FDA, so that means no clinical trials as we show equivalence to existing products, namely suture anchors. We have identified our predicate device, and we have our pre-submission meeting with FDA in less than a month, and then we're on track to get first clearance in 10 to 12 months. Our team is lean and focused. Together, we cover almost the entire medtech spectrum with 4 patents and dozens of products launched and deals executed. I am operating the company full-time with a board and key advisors, and then we're contracting out professional services, and we'll bring on a few key roles, starting with VP of R&D after we close our A round, which is open now. It is limited to accredited investors. It's led by Keiretsu Forum Mid-Atlantic. It's a $1.5 million round at a $4.5 million pre-money valuation. It's preferred equity. We have about 500,000 still open, and we're in active diligence with some ACA member groups, plus high net worth individuals are in our syndicate. Our goal is to exit prior to another financing, monetizing our IP by licensing through a strategic or through an outright acquisition. And we're projecting an ROI of about 4 to 12x in 18 to 36 months. Trace Orthopedics is pioneering image-guided fixation, the future of tendon repair. Join us as we give people back their mobility.
Now that we've wrapped up our presentations, we are going to turn it over for the Q&A, which we also like to jokingly call the Inquisition. It's going to be with Mark Francis. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Barrington, and thank you, Yvonne and Adam. Very good, exciting presentations. I know personally from a shoulder injury, and I know that Barrington knows from far more injuries, that an injury to a limb that is so vital to us can actually affect us. I found it even affected my cognitive confidence, because our hands are so important to us. If we're not using our hands and our arms well, it affects us psychologically. So you're both doing something really important. Tell us about the aha moment, how it occurred, and what you did immediately after that aha moment, Yvonne, and then Adam.
Yeah, so I think when I think of the aha moment, it's probably the development of the product. And I actually came in a little bit late. The product was already developed. I started with Alyve just this year. But when you say aha moment, what I think about is I talk about our product, and because we're changing the standard of care, there's an aha moment every time somebody puts Neuralign S on and feels the change in the stimulation, and that it's so different from any other stimulator device. And so I get excited. That was an aha moment for me as I did diligence on the company and came and decided I wanted to come on board and be part of the leadership team. But it's an experience I also get to have literally every week as I'm out with customers and patients, and they put it on and they're like, oh my gosh, you're right. This is really different. So that's my aha moment and why I came on board.
Sure. So yeah, I'll speak on behalf of my co-founder, Dr. Morrison, who's an interventional radiologist, who he is the original inventor, and he built this in his garage, what we're working on, the original, and put it into a meat sample and then took it into the hospital and imaged it. And and apparently he had been sitting on that for a couple of years. And he's trained and specializes in hip repair and hip pain diagnosis. And just for him, I know it was seeing the patients that were not readily treatable because they didn't fit the profile of being a good surgical candidate, but they had exhausted all their pain options. But we walk through airports and he points people out to me that they have a gait disturbance that could be treatable with this approach that we're developing to be able to provide a mechanical repair for these partially detached tendons without going in for a full surgery is going to really hit on an untapped market. And that's what got me excited, from this business standpoint, but also just from treating people and increasing their quality of life as much as possible.
Right. And so tell me, in what order did you build your team, Adam and Yvonne?
Sure. Yeah, we're a virtual team, so I'm the only full-time employee of the company. But yeah, we started with, it was myself and my co-founder. I came on as a co-inventor, and yeah, the first person that we really added to our core team was an external board member. So we were both, the original board was just the two of us, and we added somebody who is an experienced product commercialization executive, and also an active investor with an Angel Capital Association member group. So that was a critical first step for us, and we've had some fractional contributions on the financial and quality system management side. But yeah, our first hire is going to be a VP of research to really carry out and execute our objectives as it relates to getting device clearance.
Yeah. So when I came on the two founders, our focus was we had our CE marking, we had our FDA clearance. It was all about getting sales and getting some traction. So VP of sales was the first role I brought on within about a month of my arrival, followed by a VP of strategy. And that's really kind of a catch-all title, doing strategic marketing, doing strategy, doing our market access, really building out sort of a number of core competencies for us. And then as the money started coming in, it was clear we needed the CFO. So got the CFO on board for both the management internally and for our fundraising efforts. So those were the sort of the first key 3 hires that I made coming on board.
Okay, very good. And attracting talent, of course, is critical to the growth of the business. Do you currently have what you think is the full management team in place to accomplish your goals, or are you going to need to add more key members over the next 2 to 3 years, Yvonne, and then Adam?
Yeah, I really feel good about the executive level team that we've built out, those key positions I just mentioned, and you saw the other individuals associated with our chief research officer and our operations. But there is some infrastructure we definitely need to scale, and that is in the clinical area, in sort of the day-to-day marketing, and particularly in both the European and US sales. We have a different kind of sale, even though we're a medical device. It's not sort of the typical device rep in the OR, but we really have clinical consultants that need to work with orthopedic surgeons and with physical therapists. So that's a really key position for us as we expand our sales force and start to scale.
Same here. Yeah, we're pretty satisfied. We operate a real virtual model where we contract out our R&D and engineering services. The VP of research role that I mentioned was initially conceived as a chief scientific officer, but just given the how we're able to leverage this outside contract group, that we're comfortable that we can save resources and use a VP role for that. But for the clinical, that will be an executive role for us, especially because part of our launch strategy entails validating our reimbursement model, and so we really want somebody that can take some responsibility on understanding just the dynamics of the coding system and how we communicate that through various value analysis committee type environments with the sites that are subscribed for our alpha launch.
Okay, excellent answers. I really like both of your answers. So now I'm going to switch a little more to the operational and adoption side. So Yvonne, tell us about the biggest educational hurdle you're finding with the clinicians as you bring them on. And then Adam, what you anticipate will be the biggest educational hurdle dealing with, I guess, orthopedic surgeons, et cetera.
So that's a great question for us because we really are changing the standard of care and going from what was good, just having physical therapy as part of your rehab or even involved in some cases in prehab, but changing that now and using a tool that is so different and is different. I think our customers think, oh, well, we've seen stimulation devices, we've seen TENS units, we've seen those kind of things. And again, going back to that aha moment of putting this on and saying, oh my gosh, no, there really isn't anything like this. This is really different. And so when we change that standard of care and we incorporate a new therapy into the practice, that's really the educational hurdle we have. Sometimes people say, well, what's your competition? And I say, we don't have direct company competition. What I have is the standard of care competition. So it's educating. Orthopedic surgeons seem to get it really quickly. But our key customer also then is the physical therapist and helping them see the difference in the product and then how to utilize that effectively with their practice. So those are our educational challenges and why we'll use clinical consultants to help us spread that educational effort.
Yeah, for us, there's going to be a whole range of topics to educate users on, just from the procedure itself, and that's going to be critical. And we actually have a pretty nice game plan for utilizing some surgical training labs and explainer videos and demos. But yeah, just really creating awareness, and because since we're conceiving this as used by interventional radiologists initially, that this is actually an option for them to be able to do procedures, but for surgeons that this is a time efficient option for them. So that there's a whole range of options, and yeah, it's just for us, it's going to be building that awareness, because everyone that we tell, they're very excited about it. They're very quick to express interest in participating with us. But yeah, we just need to make sure that value is communicated in the proper manner, and that's through these the associations and the academic organizations that support these groups.
Well, and now my penultimate question. We're going to dig a little deeper in a way into this area. We've got a wave of increasing elderly patients. In fact, Adam, in a previous presentation that you made explicit reference to the fact that often elderly have partial tendon tears. And you mentioned a specific tear, in fact, and I can't remember what it was. So can you talk a little bit more about the challenges with elderly patients, Adam, and then Yvonne?
Sure. Yeah, and actually, it's this tear in the gluteus medius tendon that is my partner, Dr. Morrison, he's published some research on the disease history evolution, and how and this is over like a 5 or 6 year period that like I think it's like 60% of patients over 65 have this condition to some degree, and it's skewed by gender too, with it more prevalent in females, and it's something that there's going to be no shortage of interest, based on the fact that we get calls now from patients that they want They want this solution. And it's, we really want to, kind of increase the ability for just activities of daily living. And that's, we are, I think, in a unique position to be able to do that, because just having a physician prescribe a walker is something that, we're just not satisfied with.
In the shoulder space, it's a little interesting. We currently treat, I'll say, a lot more younger patients than, say, elderly patients. And but across both groups, what I do see, as we've expanded our indications, we have protocols for instability and dyskinesia and rotator cuff repair and reverse shoulder arthroplasty. So in some of those areas, you start to see more of an older population. And I think what happens for them is, one, they become, if they've compensated or if they've been in, haven't maybe had surgery as quickly or don't want to be a surgical candidate, then they get a little bit scared and they really limit how much they're willing to move. And then, you compensate for that, and it's just not a good position. So putting this device on, putting our Neuroline S device on, and then being able to, yes, I absolutely can raise my arm, and they might be scared to do that. So giving them the confidence that raise it will get you there. We'll be able to retrain those muscles, retrain the brain, and you will have the level of optimum movement that you should have, and let you get back, as Adam said, to activities of daily living and the motion and things that you want to do. So all patients get a little scared and nervous when they've been inhibited or they've had an injury, but we know that especially true in the elderly, and we know that growing population. And as we expand also into knee and spine, we know then we really begin to get into that broader population, and again, across orthopedics growing like crazy. And so you want to have therapies that are efficient, that can be done in the home when they want to be done in the home, and get everybody back to the place that they most want to be.
Very good. And the final question for each of you. What is your very next milestone, Yvonne and Adam?
Gosh, so many milestones, so much to do. Honestly, for me, I have to say it's fundraising. We know what we need to do. We just need to be able to scale and bring in the resources to bear. So it's, for me, it's meeting the fundraising goals for my seed 2 and keeping that moving.
Yeah, I guess that one milestone can't occur without closing our funding round now. So for me, I think for Trace, that's the same, is closing our Series A. But yeah, our next checkpoint is when we have that meeting with the FDA next month in November, is when we'll be getting comments. And yeah, so that could be a milestone depending on what we learn. But certainly, yeah, we're not going to get clearance until we close this round, so we can redeploy those resources.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, both of you, Yvonne and Adam, for coming on. And now we'll go back to Barrington.
Thank you to our presenters, Frank Luppino, CEO of Remedium Bio, Yvonne Bokelman, CEO, Alyve Medical, and Adam Greenspan, co-founder and president of Trace Ortho. Thank you to the people that have worked behind the scenes, James Black, Melissa Robertson, and of course the founder and creator of Tech Tuesday, Mr. Mark Francis. Next, a thank you to John Ricci and the network at US Angels. Lastly, thank you to our attendees for taking a slice out of your day to learn and support the companies on Tech Tuesday. I implore you, go to the company websites to learn more about them and their projects. Go to the US Angels website. If you have a lead for them, please do connect. Next Tuesday, we'll bring you another public-private company showcase. You won't want to miss it. Make sure you follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, and may you have continued success in expanding your business.